Next, let's welcome a representative from Brazil, Thiago Bianchi. Thiago Bianchi, PhD, is the principal data scientist at Itaú Unibanco, one of the biggest banks in Brazil, responsible for guiding the team on implementing a data science development methodology, a common machine learning architecture for model development and deployment, and a series of machine learning concepts. Prior to Itaú, he was a senior software engineer at the IBM Brazil Software Laboratory for 13 years, having worked on several projects and activities, including authoring over 15 patents involving AI applications in IBM products. He is a member of the Patent Evaluator Board at IBM Brazil, and he is the architect of the GIS products and researcher architect of functionalities based on machine learning techniques for the IBM Maximo portfolio. In the academic arena, he is a visiting professor for the disciplines of data science at Fundação Dom Cabral, invited advisor for the MBA in data science at USP ESALQ, and a collaborating researcher at ICMC USP. He has extensive experience in the market developing and architecting large software products since 2005, working with companies such as Itaú, IBM, Casas Bahia, and iStone. Today, Thiago is excited to talk to us about the trust of machine learning models for credit recovery. Welcome, Thiago. Over to you.
Hello everyone. So first of all, thank you for having me. I am thrilled to talk a little bit about some topics in data science and my experience working here at Itaú. So the topic our presentation this afternoon will be related with trustworthiness of machine learning models here at the bank. The main points that we will discuss in this presentation are, first of all, we will talk a little bit about the concept of data-driven and why this is so important regarding this topic, the trust of machine learning models. Then we will recap a little bit about what is a model. Then we'll talk about the evaluation metrics and approaches that we have today and why they may be not enough. And then we will address the main topic, which is conformity scores. I will leave for you guys a couple references for you to continue studying and learning. A disclaimer, this will be a more technical discussion and a more technical lecture in comparison to the other one. So hold on. The idea of this talk is to answer the question, how good is your model? Is your model trust enough? Before we answer the question, let's recap some very basic concepts. Here at the bank, I'm used to discuss this chart with the business executives about the data-driven concept. We have two axes here. One tells about the data index and the other one tells about the business index. The data index X tells us about how good we are dealing with our data. In other words, do we still have only transactional databases, or are we advancing for analytical databases? Are we using data lakes or not? Data lake is the main word related with data-centric and data governance and all the other disciplines about data. On the data-savvy quadrant, we have basic studies, dashboards, and insights based on data. To reach the data-driven quadrant, machine learning models are required to achieve a full automatized scenario about business decisions. So data-driven is all about a high level of data indexing and a high level of business indexing. So this is the concept that I would like to highlight. This is a very known chart in the academic field that started to be discussed in the 90s. We are about more or less 20 years after this chart. So the idea is, as more data is coming, we may probably reduce our capability to manually handle all those data. This chart has a context related with the financial market, mainly with credit grant and credit recovery. We do not have any possibility to work with manual credit analysis anymore. We have millions and millions of credit contracts being granted, and we cannot afford having credit analysts to look each one of them. So machine learning models on the financial market is something that right now is mandatory. So this is the reason why. The amount of data, the amount of business problems that we need to run, they grew up enormously in the last 20 years. Moving on, we have a very known statement that says we are awash in a flood of data today. A couple of facts about that. In 2007, we had more than 30 millions of surveillance cameras in US. That means more than 4 billion video hours. We cannot have people looking to each one of them. In 2002, we had 5 exabytes of new printed magnetic and optics produced. That means about 7 million books in the American Library of Congress. And one single issue of New York Times contains more information than an average person in the 7th century could read in its entire life. So information is growing up in the last decade a lot. A little bit about the scale that we have here at the bank. Itaú is the largest private bank in South America. We have dozens of financial products for retail segment. We have millions of contracts per month in a billionaire wallet. We have only in our data lake 9 petabytes of data. We have about 5 million clients, more than 300 data scientists, and only in the last year, we have deployed more than 150 machine learning models. So we are working on a very huge scale in terms of data and business problems to solve. One more information to give us context. Data-driven concept, because all of the reasons that I just mentioned, is tight related with automatizing the decision process. In other words, for financial market, for example, we are granting a credit for that particular client or not. We need to take that decision automatically. Machine learning models, as I said, they are the main tool to provide such automation. But to make this decision automatically, how can we trust or rely on the machine learning model decision? Let's recap a little bit what is a model. Model in machine learning, it's nothing more than representing a data relationship. As we all know, we can have mainly 2 types of machine learning models. supervised one or an unsupervised machine learning model. The supervised, we already have a target variable, we already have an answer. On the unsupervised, we don't have a label. For supervised, we want to understand the relationship between all the variables and the target variable. For unsupervised learning, we want to understand the similarities and the proximity relationships between the data. In another perspective, a model on the supervised scenario is a representation of a joint probability distribution between all the variables that we have and the target variable that we want to understand. Taking as an example of the credit allowance that I'm mentioning, giving all the contract variables and giving all the client variables, can we grant the credit for this particular contract or not? The target variable is 0 or 1. So this is a supervised scenario. Unsupervised learning, we don't have the answer. We have only strong guarantees for the supervised scenarios. For the unsupervised ones, we don't have such guarantees. I'm leaving you 2 main articles for you to take a look. So to talk about trust, we only can talk about for supervised machine learning scenarios. Well, let's assess the model and check if the model is good or not good. How do we do traditionally? We need to assess to choose between several models for our problem. In other words, we need to choose between several different model representations. Just to give you a context, which model would be the best? The one that fits better to the data or the one that is much simpler? The idea is to consider like a linear function instead of a polynomial function. Which one would be more generic? In other words, we want to assess if you are in a underfitting or overfitting scenario. We need to assess the bias variance dilemma. This is a very known dilemma in machine learning. So the idea is to choose the model that will be more generic in terms of new data. This is a trade-off between a model that would prone to overfitting and a model that would prone to underfitting. And the risk of those 2 scenarios will be right in the middle. The best for supervised learning is the balance between underfitting and overfitting. To assess that, we also know that we have very, I would say, consolidated strategies. 2 of them that are mostly used are the holdout and the k-fold cross-validation. On the holdout, we split the data into training and test or validation, and in holdout, we partition the data set in several smaller groups. For example, let's having a k equals 10. So we'll have 10 partitions. You separate the first one for testing, training with the 9 others. You get the second one for testing, get the 9 others for training, and you compute all the metrics for each one of those partitions. This is very known. The metrics that we normally compute, they all came from the same representation. We call that as the confusion matrix, in which we compare the expected values that the algorithm is producing, the model is producing, and we compare with the actual values, the real values. And from that, we can extract several metrics. The most used one and the most known one is the accuracy. But we have much more techniques. We have the precision, we have the F1 score, recall, and a bunch of other ones. What all those metrics have in common, they are summarization of the errors that we are assessing. In other words, they tend to have an average behavior. They tell how good the machine learning model is, but they don't tell how trustable this machine learning model is. In other words, they may be not enough to compare to machine learning models. Of course, we are talking about the context of MLOps. So monitoring a model is something that we need to do on an incremental way. And we have the MLOps practice here at the bank as well. The idea is to monitor the model following more than one technique, more than one metric, and maybe using more approaches than the ones that we know. The idea and the question that I want to make to you guys for reflection is, are those very known metrics enough? Let's see an example about the binary classification that I just mentioned from the financial market. The question, the business question that we want to answer for credit allowance is, give me the probability of a given client with a given financial product be in default condition in the next 3 months. So I want to assess the probability of this particular client not paying their mortgage, for example, or their personal loan, for example, in the next 3 months. The question is, how would this model would be trained? We would look for the training data, for the history data, and get for each one of the date references and mark in the data set one when that particular client and contract was delayed in the next 3 months in the past, and 0 otherwise. So the model would need to be a very good representation about a binary classification. This is not a probabilistic relationship in the past. My point is, when the model answers equals a 0.5 for a new client, is it a probabilistic uncertainty or a model uncertainty? The idea is, if our model is good, it should be a very good estimator about the joint probability distribution. And the joint probability distribution in the past has only as the valid answers 0 or 1. So our model, to be good, need to answer most of the times values near to 0 or values near to 1. When our model answers something in the middle, this is not a probabilistic uncertainty. This is actual a model uncertainty. And for the financial market, we need to assess this uncertainty. Why? Of course, we want to make sure that we will have a policy when the model answers a value near to 0. So we are allowing the credit for that person because the probability of that person being default in the next 3 months will be more near to 0. And when the probability or the model answer is more near to 1, this person would have probably a more tax rate, a more interest rate, because this particular contract would be more prone to a default condition. When the model answers something around 0.5 in this scenario, we don't want to take that as a final decision. So the idea is to have a neutral policy for this scenario. Where in a graphical representation, what we would have is a scenario similar like this one. We have the same data set and two different models. The model on the left is the one that would be better because the values are more concentrated and they are more near to 0 or 1. We are talking here in this example about a binary classification. The model on the right is more uncertainty about the 1 values. It is answering something more near to 0.5. So the model in the left is more reliable than the model on the right. What we do to quantify this uncertainty? There is a paper that was published in 2008 that proposes the assessment of certainty and uncertainty for machine learning models. This approach is called as conformity scores. It is still under certain research in the academic, but it is starting to be widely adopted in the industry. The idea around conformity scores is, if I give you a new unlabeled or unclassified data, check the surroundings of this point and see if the class or the answer that the model is giving is similar to the ones that is near to that point. If it is similar, we see that we have a conformal prediction. If it's much different, we call that this prediction is non-conformal. In the chart, in the example on the left, suppose that the green dot would be labeled by the model as blue. This blue classification, if we consider just the neighborhood in the center, would be non-conformal because we have more reds near the green dot. If we consider a wider range, a wider region, this same blue classification would be non-conformal because we have more blues in this wider region. The idea here is to have a notion of density, very similar to the KNN approach, the K-nearest neighbors approach. So the idea is to assess which one is near and then balance in terms of space topology around this concept. The algorithm to perform this measurement is similar like this one. I will leave this session to move forward because I want to make more useful of the time that we have. But the idea is what we are doing at the bank to assess this region. We built our own library based on an open source library to assess this notion of uncertainty or certainty. This is a complementary concept. And we are giving this assessment for the business teams. In other words, if we see in the chart, we are assessing the conformity scores for class 0 and class 1. Of course, this is not a real data. This is just a toy example. In the left, you are seeing the orange and green curve. The orange curve represents the minimum score and the green curve represents the higher score in the region of certainty. The idea is we are delivering to the business team the levels and the region of scores that they can trust. They can take the decisions on the trust region, and they can take a more neutral approach when they are outside of these regions. Again, we are using those conformity scores as a measurement of monitoring together with other metrics. As an example, this is a table that represents our monitoring scores in two of our models. You see that we have AUC, F1 scores, and we are producing those conformity scores for each one of the regions that we are assessing for different confidence levels. Final remarks before we jump to the Q&A session. The traditional measurements, they hide the trustworthiness of models. Study conformity scores because they could be very useful to assess the model reliability. They are a trend in the academic field and could be adopted in all the cases. Play a little bit about conformity scores. There are some demos on the internet. I'm leaving one of the demos here. Conformity scores can be used for all supervised learning scenarios, binary, multi-class, multi-label, and regression as well. Conformity scores, they do not replace the traditional measurements. They should be considered together. And the adoption of conformity scores is our way to address model reliability here at the bank. I'm leaving here some references for you guys, and thank you. That's it. Let's move to the Q&A session.
Great. Thank you, Tiago, for that insightful presentation. All right, we have about 8 minutes left. From the audience, we've got Venkatesh Sempath. He's got a question. It says, what do you think about inaccurate AI models in our environment? Recently, an EV car can't or isn't able to detect a horse cart in front of it. How dangerous is this? How are we going to use AI in a human-friendly way?
A very good question, and in my opinion, it especially for image recognition, we tend to assume that the model is generic enough to be employed in all scenarios. And most of the times what we see is that we are employing a model that was trained to identify some particular set of images, and we face that, or we believe that this model is generic enough to be employed in other scenarios. In my opinion, we are being very bad in terms of evaluating the models. In this lecture, what I would like to give you more clarity is you need to assess and evaluate your models before production. And when they are in production, you need to keep evaluating them to avoid risks in business and even for human lives.
All right. Busa Catherine Atienza, I'm sorry, I forgot your name wrong. She asks, artificial intelligence is already transforming the financial ecosystem, offering a wide range of opportunities and challenges across different sectors, and AI model governance is becoming a key concern. How will you explain the output of machine learning as a top priority for banks and regulatory to understand, experience, and to learn?
And to answer that, the answer has a very tight relationship to this topic. because most of the times the financial machine learning models, they are related to a binary or a multi-class classification problem. And to make them more explainable, we need to assess the reliability of those models. So the meaning of reliability is the higher or the lower is the score, you can interpret the model. The model is certain about the answer. For intermediate or uncertainty regions, the model is not trust enough. So that's our way here at the bank to give this clarity for the upper level leadership here at the bank.
Simone Ezekiel Maraquilt asks, how would we deal with security and data privacy considerations when integrating AI into the credit business?
We have a lot. When I say a lot, I really mean a lot of regulatory and mandates to follow in this business. And in my opinion, if we follow all the regulatory mandates, one of the very known is the GDPR, we could be safe about the ML applications. One criteria that we must have is take care of the data that you are selecting for your models. And we do that here at the bank. So be sure that we are not having a gender or a race problem in our data. We avoid those type of variables to make sure that we are not imposing any judgmental bias in our model. So I would say that privacy and regulatory needs to be followed prior to the model development, not.
All right. We're about out of time right now. Can you choose a winner for us? Which question is the most thoughtful question so we can award a prize?
I like the question of Busa about artificial intelligence in the financial market. In my opinion, this one is the winner.
Busa Catherine Atienza is the winner of the contest. Thank you, Tiago, for that great presentation. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, everyone.